and therefore face massive fines. And as the friend of the chair in Copenhagen, Kevin Rudd would also have a little egg on his international face.
I think with carbon...
The Labor government aren't the only ones feeling heat over this hunger strike.
So,
you represent Clark?
No, we're not doing that, mate.
I'll see you outside.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, your mate's familiar, eh? Get off it, you're trespassing.
The moment we arrived at Peter Spencer's property, Liberal MP Bill Heffernan was leaving, and he had little choice.
Go on, up. You've been asked off the property, mate. The owner has ordered you off. Go. Go. That's right, no. You've been told.
For these farmers, Bill Heffernan represents the former Howard government and its role in implementing the legislation which they say has locked them from their land.
He was sitting on a ledge in Sydney, mate. He'd have been down ages ago.
They went to Kyoto to do a deal, unbeknown to the farmers, to lock up millions of hectares of land to meet the Kyoto commitment because they knew that the energy sector's emissions were going to grow.
The farmers are furious because other carbon polluters, such as the energy sector, have been massively compensated during a time that their carbon emissions have risen. At the same time, agricultural emissions have reduced, but farmers say they haven't received a cent, and they believe this is the thin edge of the wedge.
And yet they brought out this bullshit legislation to try and deprive landowners of their rights. Vegetation's only one. It was water, and it's going to be residential opportunity, it's going to be minerals.
Irrigation licenses.
Irrigation licenses. The bullshit never ends.
Why aren't the people rising up and saying, we are the people, and these politicians and public servants are our servants? We're not peasants. This is not an aristocracy.
Greg Neuendorf raises cattle in northern Michigan. Time in the saddle is one of the best parts of the day for this fifth-generation farmer. But these days, he's spending lots of time holed up in his home office. Why? Neuendorf and other small farmers are fighting the government's plans to identify and track every single farm animal in the country. It's called NAIS, or National Animal Identification System.
On October 8th, Michigan ag officials arrived on Greg Neuendorf's farm with a search warrant. The problem? Neuendorf refused to allow the ag officials to put radio frequency identification tags on his cattle.
Pressure forced Neuendorf to give in that day, but his story spread rapidly in farming communities, making him the face of a grassroots opposition movement.
The tag goes in the air, they give me a premises ID number. Now they got a national number on my cattle, they got a national number on my land. I might still technically own the animal, but they're controlling what I can and can't do with it.
Privacy experts say many USDA programs, like this one for sheep and goat producers in New York, already require an NAIS number. And small farmers like Virginian Scott Wilson worry about the cost of buying tags and tracking animals. Tagging every chicken could put Wilson out of business.
To be effective, they're going to need 100% participation in this program. And that is, really, I think, going to put an undue burden on us as small farmers.
More than 100 new taxes are now being developed under the umbrella of curbing greenhouse gases. The new taxes will be paid directly to the private bank consortium. At the producer level, taxes will be paid on farm animals' flatulence. At the consumer level, there will be carbon taxes on all forms of meat, beef, poultry, pork, and fish. All cars will be fitted with satellite tracking boxes that will tax driving by the mile. And an added tax will be placed on all fossil fuels, including motor oil and natural gas. All plastic products will have a carbon tax added. Outdoor space heaters and fireplaces are to be taxed. All electricity produced by coal-powered plants will be taxed. Under the cap-and-trade system, citizens will be forced to pay taxes on thousands of products to private cap-and-trade services owned by Al Gore and other elitists. There will be taxes on light bulbs, water, trash pickup, air travel, train travel, bus, ship, medicine, steel production, mining, clothing, laundry, asphalt are just a few of the new taxes to be levied.
But to truly transform our economy, to protect our security and save our planet from the ravages of climate change, we need to ultimately make clean, renewable energy the profitable, kind of energy. So I ask this Congress to send me legislation that places a market-based cap on carbon pollution and drives the production of more renewable energy in America. That's what we need.
The notion of anthropogenic global warming is a fraud. In other words, the idea that the planet is getting warmer and that human activity is somehow responsible is a pseudo-scientific fraud. It's a big lie. It's a monstrosity. Remember the Nazis, they had race science, race hygiene. They said Aryan blood is different from any other kind of blood. This was, of course, idiocy, a fantastic piece of nonsense. Today, we got something similar. Global warming caused by human activity, and the answer to that is carbon tax plus cap and trade, according to the wishes of Al Gore, Prince Charles, and basically the entire world banking community, the world oligarchy. What they're trying to do with that is to perpetuate the current system where bankers rule the world, financiers rule the world, and the rest of us get the crumbs from the table. But remember, if you try to put on cap and trade and a global warming carbon tax with the idea that you're going to save the polar bears, what you're going to do is destroy human society. You're going to cause genocide on a massive scale. The deaths will be measured in the hundreds of millions and indeed in the billions. Just the idea of global warming means that there'll be no development for Africa, no development for the poorer parts of Southeast Asia, and no world economic recovery of any kind ever in our entire lifetime. So it's important to expose and fight the pseudo-scientific fraud of global warming. One more point about this. You don't need a climatologist to know that this stuff is a fraud. I'm a historian. I can tell you, in the last 1,000 years, we had a period of very warm temperatures called the medieval warm period, where all kinds of grapes and semi-tropical stuff was growing very far into the northern hemisphere. That was about 1100, 1200. It happened to correspond with an all-time maximum of sunspots. Right now, we can say that we're going into another maximum period where there'll be some warming, but we're well within the limits of the medieval warm period. About 1600 to 1650, there was an ice age in northern Europe. The North Sea was filled with ice. The German and Dutch ports and the English ports were filled with ice. That corresponds to an all-time minimum of sunspot activity, the Spörer minimum and the Maunder minimum. So this has largely got to do with solar activity. We can see that other planets, not just the Earth, are warming slightly as a result of increased solar activity. But we're well within the minimum. So what the oligarchs claim to be an open and shut scientific case is a piece of pseudo-scientific nonsense, and it should be rejected.
Right, we've got a split screen ANPR system in front of us. As you can see, a car just gone by now. What I do is read a registration plate, and that registration plate has come up. We can see what the car is. There's a picture of the registration plate. When it's taken that registration plate number, it's checking it against numerous databases, of which there are about 60-70 databases being run on this computer at this present time, from all over the country. Forces send each other intelligence, cross-border activities we try to curtail. And that information is stored on a database which is downloaded daily. So whenever a vehicle goes by, when you've just seen that registration number come up, it's check that registration number against all those numerous databases.
How come they're more interested in their football and their beer? Our liberty's only maintained by eternal vigilance. Let's not ever forget that.